Hey everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Felipe Salles, saxophonist, arranger, award-winning composer, leader of the Felipe Salles Interconnections Ensemble, and professor of jazz studies at UMass Amherst. Felipe is here to show us how to create moods with polychords.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So one of the things that I wanted to explore when I started writing music was how to get out of regular, tonal harmonies. And sometimes I feel like that can be a very interesting thing to do. It creates a mood, it creates something mysterious, but at the same time can be very daunting trying to figure out what kinds of chords and what kinds of, dissonances you want to use. So I want to play for you. I want to show you first something I did in my first big band album where I used some polychords so you can hear the sound of it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to create that kind of sonority. This is from my second album entitled The New Immigrant Experience. And it's a little interlude where I took the melody that has been played, which is the top line of the piano, and then I basically harmonized that using polychords or combinations of two chords that create the sense of not being quite tonal. And then there's a response that happens in the bass. And this is basically just piano solo. So let's listen to it. So actually the melody is very simple. It's just a major scale going down, but you don't quite realize that, in the middle of all that dissonance or mystery. I don't know how to say. So I want to take another melody that I used in my first album, the Lullaby Project, where I used the same kind of principle. So if we look at the slide, you'll see the melody there. And so the way I prepared this lesson is, instead of showing you what I did, we're going to start by looking at a possible way to harmonize that using just triads. So not thinking of, say, the dissonance per se yet, but how we could harmonize that using just one triad. So if we listen to this, you hear that the harmony sometimes comes out of, let's say, the tonal spectrum, but it's still only using triads, inverted triads, as you can see sometimes, and sometimes not inverted, but it's only triads with this very simple melody, which is basically in A minor. So this first variation, as you can see, is mostly, I'm using triads that work with A minor and sometimes harmonic minor, sometimes natural minor, but it's inverted triads, but still sounds very tonal, right? So the next step would be to try to put a note in the bass and create what we call a triad with a chromatic bass. Chromatic, not in the sense that the bass is moving chromatically, but in the sense that the bass note doesn't belong to the diatonic realm of the triad. So let's take a look at what I mean by that. So for example, here I'm taking the same triads as we had before, but now the guitar is playing a note that doesn't belong to the key. So for example, the first triad, you have A minor, but you have a B flat in the bass. And then the second chord is an F major, but it has a G flat in the bass. What does that do is it disturbs the tonality, you know? It doesn't create a polychord quite yet, but it creates a sense of not being in the key. So let's listen to this version, which has the same triads as before, but now with the disturbing element of a chromatic bass. So you can hear that it's very different and brings it quite outside of the comfort zone of the tonality. You could keep it like that if you like it. It's already a sonority that is very different from where we started. But you can also take that note and use that note, the new note, the chromatic note in the bass, to build a triad underneath the diatonic triad. So let's take a look at that last. So if you can see now, that B flat that was in the bass of the first chord now becomes a B flat minor triad. So you have A flat minor with a B flat minor triad underneath. And now instead of B flat, we have D flat in the bass. And the same thing happens to F, which now has a G flat major triad underneath. And then B flat becomes the bass. That can be something that you can explore, inverting the triads or not inverting the triads. But basically here there's a lot of the same quality triads going on, and normally the triad above is a half step below the triad below. So A minor over B flat, A minor would be, you know, the seventh of major seven of B flat. So that helps avoid certain too strong dissonances like minor nines and things like that. But that can be also embraced in the future. But this is a variation that I consider a little more consonant in the fact that it's not, you know, using extremely harsh dissonances between the chord. So now let's listen to the final version with the polychords and the inverted triads, not just the triad with the chromatic bass. I hope this lesson has been helpful in showing you the different steps you can take to develop polychords, starting with triads and then adding a chromatic bass and then developing this into a full polychord structure.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.